Hello, Matt.
Hello, hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Talking about death straight away.
Yeah, good. How's it going?
Very good. Very good. Where are you guys?
This is my apartment that I share with my wife.
Nice. But you in London?
Yeah, in Hammersmith, right.
Right.
That's
Okay,
a really
great.
obvious answer. Yeah, no, in Hammersmith. You're in London as well, Matt?
I am. I'm in Muswell Hill. Where are you, Mark?
I'm in Hackney. I'm actually coming to Muswell Hill for a couple of weeks, looking after my mate's cat.
Are you saying on a job, on a very important job that I can't talk about too much?
No.
You obviously haven't done enough of these seminars. You're like, well, I don't want to say too much, but it's quite a big deal. It definitely doesn't involve a cat.
What's the cat's name? Maybe that could be the code name for the film.
The cat's name is Yoda. So.
Oh, no.
It involves Yoda. But anyway, it's not a spin-off series. I've said too much. Anyway,
we're remaking the 9th one.
How are you?
Yeah, good. How are you? Good. I haven't seen you for ages.
Yeah, it's been ages. Yeah, good. Very good. It was Vida's, my youngest, it's her birthday yesterday.
Oh, nice.
That was fun. So yeah, we did the whole. Yeah, thank you. It was kind of the social isolation thing. Not quite. So she's having instead of having one big party, she's having about 7 parties by the sounds of things, which is very Iranian. Her mum's Iranian. So yeah, no, it was good. It was good. We ate a lot of cake. And then we went, at the end of that, we were like, do we need the other 4 birthdays? We've kind of done it, haven't we? She's like, no, more cake. There's definitely going to be more cake this week. But yeah, we're good.
That's all you're eating this week, cake.
Yeah, basically. It's funny. Yeah, I mean, so my wife's a doctor. So she's been experiencing everything that's going on firsthand.
Sure.
And I've been here in what is now my office upstairs in the house and doing childcare and this. It's been lovely.
I was kind of expecting to see some of your movie posters on the wall or something.
No,
Matt.
I'm not. No, I've got a picture of Jimi Hendrix and a random poster. I've got a clapperboard on the wall. That's it. I've only just really moved up here, to be honest. There's because we got, luckily just before the lockdown, we got the loft down. So we've actually got rooms upstairs. So we've got our au pair just behind me, and then we've got an office. It's amazing. Thank God. Well, I think, yeah, they would have definitely imploded. It would have gone a bit fair. The kids would have gone feral or set fire to the house or something. It's nice having a bit of space.
Do you have a garden or anything for them to get outside?
Got a pretty good garden and Golly, my wife, because I used to go swimming every day, and she was, and you know, that was the one bit of the lockdown. I was like, yeah, I really would like to keep swimming, but obviously there's no way of doing it. And so she went and bought a massive, huge paddling pool with huge bungee cords to tie me to one end. So I go and do that every time. In the past, when I was working from home, if I needed a break, I'd just go and eat the entire contents of the fridge. And now I go for a swim. So it's quite good.
I've actually started swimming.
Have you?
Yeah. There's a reservoir just by Finsbury Park.
Nice.
And they've opened that up because it's outdoors. And
well, some of the details. I've been going to one in Merchant Taylor's school.
Right.
Golly found it as well. It's a good half-hour drive out of where we're from. It's a massive lake in a private school.
Yeah, so this reservoir is probably about an hour from you, I'd imagine. Hour and a half, walk.
Yeah, it's good. Well, I could get on a bike. I think we're going to hire some bikes.
It's been great. I've got really into it. I've not swam consistently since I was about 14, so it's
yeah. Oh no, I love it. It's my favorite thing to do. It's just a way of you definitely switch everything off when you're in the water. And try not to drown.
I remember actually in Sex, Drugs, Rock and Roll, Matt, that you needed accommodation near a pool. When we were looking for you, because that was a set job. He's going to do a 12-hour day every day, and then he's going to go swimming as well every day.
I didn't do it every day, but I did manage to do it quite a lot. Actually, it's so funny. That was a really hard shoot because I didn't really know what I was doing, and not that things have changed that much. But I think the swimming was like, okay, fine. Well, even if they fire me, at least I get a swim in every couple of days. Yeah, that was pretty. I got forgotten about that. I do remember swimming, but I didn't remember I'd asked for a pool to be near me. That's very Hollywood.
Oh no, it wasn't like blue M&Ms. It was just that those are the criteria we were looking with.
So kind of thing. I can't believe I had the balls to ask for that. I've never done that since.
Maybe you've always made films in hot enough countries that there's water nearby.
Maybe. I don't know. Not really. So,
no, not really, I guess.
So cool. So I saw your questions. Is there anything you want to talk about before?
Yeah, those are the same questions I've sent to everybody, really. So they're just like a get out of jail free card. Are there any questions there that you would think, oh yeah, actually I've got a good story about that? Equally, every time I've asked this as well, everybody's just gone, no. Like, I think what happens...
No, it's all interesting stuff. I mean, I think it kind of depends on the people. Do you know much about the kind of people who are tuning in? Like I'm assuming we don't want to get too nerdy and specific about the things. Presumably you just want to talk a bit about what it's like to, how we got into it, what it's been like.
Yeah, good question. That's the audience is important in all of this. Like, I think what's nice about my sessions with the last two is that indeed it feels like we can talk about other bits and pieces about what's going on now or what's coming up next. But what has been, I think, liberating for people to talk about a bit is about like just to go through some nostalgia and think about how they got to here now, and just in the process of talking about their movement from one project to the next, they inevitably throws up all sorts of facts and interesting tidbits and things. I'm really dark here, aren't I? Why? It's because I'm backlit.
You've got a big window behind you.
Yeah, two big windows and one giant head without any hair on it.
You could pull down the blind, or you could spin it around. Would be a solution.
Yeah.
Well, there must be probably some way. As long as your head blocks out the light entirely, you're right. Or you could.
If I do the whole thing here.
Yeah, then you'd be fine. It can be slightly terrifying for people, but it can.
It's a little bit intense. It's supposed to be a relaxed chat. Yeah, I mean, that's it. Like, we're just kind of shooting the shit, as you could say. Like, the structure that I put in that first email works quite well. We kind of do intros of of your CVs, talk a bit about, given context to whatever, what is your job and how do you do it? And remember that when you're answering questions, imagine that the person that you're talking to has really no idea what a director or an editor does. So you can really take it through in baby steps, and it helps kind of pad out the description of your work, but also just imagine you're talking to an alien, I suppose.
Sure. And I'm trying to think, is there in terms of timing, because I don't want to waffle on too long, how long are you expecting us to carry on, just so I know Mark loves to talk about himself a lot. You might spend 45 minutes answering the first question, and then we'll run out of time.
Yeah, Mark, if you can stop butting in, please, that would be great.
I'm a very nervous man. That's why I'm an editor.
I'm going to stitch you up so badly.
Well, look, I'll steer it. So I was thinking that the first kind of half an hour or so is the origins of where you've got to and how you got there. And then we'll do kind of 15-20 minutes talking about what's going on now. And I mean, what I've noticed is that if there are topics worth completing, there's it'll kind of flow from one section into the next. So there's no like demarcation line between the two sections. But yeah, I think that seems to. Don't worry, I'll steer it. If we're going too far in and too deep, we'll move on to something else.
You imagine the whole thing take an hour, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, maximum an hour. So we go for 50 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes talking, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. I mean, I've been contacting councils around the country to try and get their youth clubs or youth groups or whatever to advertise to them, to try and just kind of introduce this to people who might not have seen it before. Facebook might not be the best way to do that. I don't think like people that age really use Facebook anymore.
No, sure.
But
Instagram maybe.
Yeah, Instagram. But then there's no clickableness to it. Well, there's limited clickableness to Instagram, and so I haven't. Anyway, it's a resource that I will advertise a bit more as well as it goes along and builds, and eventually you can go on. you know, in 2 years' time, and still find this resource about you guys talking about directing and editing, and I think that it will be a help to people along the way. So that's
Sure.
the aim, at least.
Cool. So what do we do? Should we call back in 10 minutes, or are you going to stay on?
No, you're good. Well, I mean, if you need to do
I might go and plug myself in, is the only thing.
Comfort break or something?
Comfort break for me.
I have a coffee.
Right on. Okay, guys. See you in a minute.
So I'll leave it on, shall I?
Yeah, just leave it running. Yeah, cool. I had to change my shirt because I could sweat through the last one.
I did just check. I was a little bit sweaty, but I think I'm all right.
No, yeah, as long as you don't gesticulate too much.
Yeah. Keep your hands inside the vehicle.
Right, yeah, exactly. I've lowered the curtains a little bit, but I don't think it's really... fuck it. Yeah. So what are you working on at the moment then, Mark? What's
Well, very little. So I
Right.
don't have a great deal to say about that. But there's been a few weird things, very odd things come up. Weirdly, like a Premiership footballer got in touch with me through a friend saying he wanted like a vanity project.
Huh? No way.
Yeah.
So you're going to film that as well?
No. It's purely sourcing all his goals and assists and putting it to music. It's quite a simple job, but it's a very odd one.
Is it for like a birthday party or something?
It feels like that. He's obviously got a lot of time on it. He had a lot of time on his hands during lockdown, and thought, I want a showreel of all my best bits.
Right, fair enough.
And then Michael Winterbottom is potentially doing a short film on COVID in this country through the eyes of a family of refugees.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's sort of like the idea, I believe, is that the lockdown that we experienced as a nation is basically what refugees go through 24/7 a day, all the time. They can't get a job. You know, they can't go outside. They're stuck in these camps.
Oh, they get rations from the government, kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's all very, for them. That is their life, sort of thing. So that's the angle. But I mean, the refugee family are in England now. But
and how did he find them? Where? How does he know which family to pick?
There was a few options, and to be honest with you, he's very cagey when it comes to telling me information.
Right.
So I don't know how he found them, because it got shelved, because it was the Venice Film Festival commissioned it, and then they pulled the money.
Oh no! So he had to find other financing.
Well, no, he was going to shelve it completely, and then, but we did have someone going around London filming the streets of London. When there was no one on them.
Oh, sure, that's got to be valuable footage.
Yeah, amazing. It's like a really great. Because I did a lot of cycling as well around there, and it was just incredible. It was like really quite an experience.
Yeah, definitely. I did a lot of cycling as well during the lockdown. It was quite exciting, actually, being able to tour all these places with no one there.
Yeah, and also get to know London a lot better.
Yeah, true.
There's normally places I just wouldn't bother cycling to because I know it's going to be a pain.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Italians have come back and said, actually, can you do it? So I think it's back on.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, you've done a lot of editing for him over the past 10 years, huh?
Yeah. So yeah, me and Matt have probably got very similar origin stories. Although initially getting that footing will be different. But yeah, he...
Because Matt was an editor for him before you or something then, or?
Matt was an editor. Matt worked at Revolution, his production company.
Ah, right.
And he did all sorts. He was like a PA for a bit.
Yeah.
But I did editing, then started directing with Michael as well. So yeah, he's done all sorts. I went in there as an assistant editor.
Right, I saw your credits on the first trip or something as an assistant editor.
Okay. So I did that, but purely through working with a previous editor of his on a feature, and they got me into working with Michael. He's very, very good at promoting people within, so which is why I started editing so soon afterwards.
Nice, yeah, that's good. I watched The Wedding Guest yesterday.
Oh, great! What did you think?
Yeah, it was good. It definitely reminded me of a Michael Winterbottom film. Like I saw like the same kind of style of cinematography and everything that back in, what was the one with the refugees in the truck and everything in This World?
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt very stark and kind of Lars von Trier-esque kind of.
Yeah. And it helps being in India because everything looks amazing.
Yeah, indeed. The tour that they're on, the light just in the train carriage and everything, it always looks beautiful, doesn't it?
Yeah, really great, really great.
I was quite surprised at the ending. Definitely, I didn't expect her to tear off, but yeah.
Yeah, that ending is amazing. It's really, really well shot. Great ending, I think.
Guys, we gotta join because it's nearly 12 o'clock now. So I have to do a couple of things which might end up us like just staring into oblivion for a little while. Okay, good. So I'm going to go live on Facebook now, and then I have to come back to Zoom to make sure that that's all working. My producer has gone back to work. My wife has gone back to work, which is good. Good for her. More complicated for us. Okay. Where would you like to post your video? Okay, yeah.
I'm going to sorry.
Okay, I think we're almost in business. If not, already live.
Okay, cool.
Oh, wait a minute. No, I have to name the actual file first. One sec.
Well, the one thing I didn't do, I went downstairs, made myself a cup of coffee and didn't bring my charger.
Oh, no way. Do you want to go and grab your charger?
Should I go and grab it?
Yeah, because you got 2 minutes before we're kind of super live, so. Okay. Okay. So I think, Mark, we're going to go live while Matt returns.
Great. Sat on my floor on a beanbag.
Yeah, that's how you wanted to. Oh, yeah, I meant to ask you actually about kind of why I can't find you on the internet. You seem to have ghosted completely.
That's how I like it.
You certainly do. I can't find you on LinkedIn, on Google. Like IMDb is your only link, it seems.
It doesn't exist.
It's probably not good for my career, but it's how I like it.
Well, yeah, no, fair enough. You've definitely, there's purpose there, I can feel. All right, so we are live on Facebook, and here we go live on Zoom, now broadcasting to all attendees, which as of yet, I haven't quite got a handle on. Okay, all right, so, but we are here. So guys, welcome to the third in the series of Meet the Crew webinars that I've been doing. I've got guests here, Mat Whitecross, who's a director, and Marc Richardson, who's an editor. And rather than kind of do a slapdash job of introducing who they are and what they do, I'm just going to let them start it off, and then maybe I'll come back and talk a little bit about what First on Set is and why I started it and everything. But let's just introduce you guys first. Guys, have at it. Matt, why don't you start? Tell us a bit about yourself and the films you've made.
Yeah, I'm a director and sometimes a writer, but I also am a bit of a jack of all trades. I kind of do a bit of everything. So I also sometimes shoot, and I often edit with the editors I'm working with. And I started out, well, actually in the same company that Mark did, Revolution Films, working with Michael Winterbottom and Andrew Eaton, his producer at the time. And I always wanted to be a director. I'd always had that dream from very early on, but I really didn't know how to do it. But I gradually, by kind of training myself how to do various different jobs, I worked my way up. And I was an editor for a long time, but I also did, some assistant directing and some second unit directing, and kind of gradually, by kind of going off on one sideline doing my stuff and then also working on other people's stuff, I gradually got more opportunities and I got an agent. And then Michael and Andrew gave me my first massive break, which was directing a film with Michael. And we did a couple of films together, and then I went off on my own. But
Wow,
yeah,
cool.
so I've been directing, and I've done a mixture of stuff. I started off doing really political films, dramas, which is kind of where I saw myself ending up. But I've also done music videos and music films and documentaries and commercials. So like a real mix of stuff, which is, for me, keeps it all interesting. So I'd love to keep on doing that if I can, although it's kind of unusual. I think most people tend to find one thing and stick at it.
Yeah, it seems like early on in your career, you did quite a lot of political documentaries, and then you started doing kind of dramas with music in the background or as a backdrop, contextualized, whatever, and then now you seem to be doing music documentaries, like bridging the two together. Is that purposeful or?
Nothing's purposeful. It's really, I don't know how it is for other people. I think if you're maybe one of some very small echelon right at the top, you get to choose exactly what you're doing. And I've got a production company, Mint Pictures, with my producer, Fiona Nielsen. So we have our stuff that's tickling away in the background, and then every so often we get to make it. But then actually a lot of times you hear about projects or you get approached. So there's no plan really. But in terms of, the music thing, I've always loved film, music. I've always loved film, and combining the two is great. But every time I do one, then I kind of want to move away from it. And actually the most recent film that I did with, actually not the most recent film, but last but one I did with Mark, which was a Coldplay documentary.
Yeah.
And straight after we'd done an Oasis one, Supersonic. And that was exactly the time when I really didn't want to do it, but it felt like it was the only time it was ever going to happen. So we had to leap in feet first. But yeah, generally, so at the moment I'm doing a sports film, and the next thing is very different. So each one, I think generally speaking, each project, whenever I've had the chance, is a reaction to the last. You always want to do something a bit different.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, okay. But it doesn't always work like that because you're also a jobbing director, I suppose, and people will approach you to do certain, to fulfill that role on their project or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So I've got an agent who is, who will send me stuff, will ask when I'm around and when I'm not making other things. And she'll send me scripts, or she'll connect with me sometimes with documentary companies. And so I'll go and have those general meetings. I mean, I think it must be a little bit frustrating at times because we tend to, we have self-generated projects that are constantly going on. So actually you could, being not quite one thing or the other might be frustrating for an agent because, one thing is if you're only doing your stuff and that's what you're getting on with and they're just negotiating contracts. The other thing is if they're going out and kind of touting for business. But because I'm hopping between the two, you don't even know when you're around because half the time I don't know what I'm doing next. At the moment, I'm juggling about 8 projects. And so unless you do that, you don't really, suddenly 7 of them fall apart and then you're unemployed. So
I was once told that by a producer that unless you've got something like 10 films in the fire or irons in the fire, then you're not making anything at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, particularly now, I think I don't know how it's been for Mark, but I think with, you're probably about to start on something, but I think inevitably because of the pandemic, everything shut down. And luckily I happened to shut down just when I was in the middle of doing documentaries, which seem to be, it's a bit easier to carry on doing documentaries at the moment than it is on dramas, which have all the issues, so health and safety issues going on.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I feel like, but I kind of learned that again from Revolution Films, from Michael and Andrew, they would be finishing a project, but immediately dovetailing with the next. And by the time, it's interesting because, everyone always, the received wisdom with film is that, you're only as good as your last film. And if you have a great success, then the world's there on a platter. And if it's a disaster, you never work again. But they would always be 3 projects ahead. So by the time a film came out, they'd almost forgotten what it was because they were so busy making the next thing. And I think, it's hard to get stuff made. And I think there are a lot of people who just like talking about making things, whereas actually most of the people that I've been lucky enough to work with love making films, making TV. So they actually like getting their hands dirty.
Well, good segue there to let Mark talk a bit about where he's come from, what he does. The other arm of Revolution is TV as well. You've been working on the trip over the past 8 to 10 years or so, no, Mark?
Oh, well, yeah, 11 years really. 11, 12 years, yeah. So that was the first job I had with Michael, in Michael's as an assistant editor. But before that, I again, like Matt, I always knew I wanted to get into editing, or rather, yeah. But I didn't really know the way in. So I started off doing a lot of research jobs on documentaries and just finding and talking to people that way.
Sure.
Because I didn't really know the best way in. So I just felt like I was on a lot of productions, and that way I could just tell people while I was on the production, this is what I want to do.
Okay, research jobs. What was that?
Like research. I did a couple of documentaries with a guy called Joseph Ballman, who did like 7 Sins of England, and The Enemy Within. So I was like,
yeah, The Enemy Within sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like looking at the past and comparing it to the future. So like that took a lot of quotes and headlines from the 1900s about the Jewish immigrants in the country.
Wow. And
compared them to the quotes and headlines about Muslim population in the country today.
Interesting.
And just saying that nothing unfortunately changes. It's history is cyclical.
It is frustrating that when you start to see that in your own lifetime, by the end of your 20s or something, all your idealism seems to be kind of shot by just the same shit happening again.
Yeah, unfortunately, it does seem that way. But then, doing those projects, I met people and told them what I wanted to do.
Okay, cool.
And they got me editing jobs, luckily.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And that kind of segued into working at Revolution as an assistant editor, and then climbing the ranks there. Exactly.
And Michael, as Matt will agree, I'm sure, is very good at promoting within. Like if he likes you, if you work hard, he's very keen for people to promote, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, I've been working there 12 years really, and but yeah, a few assistant jobs, and then finally an editing job came, which I was well out of my depth for. But
what was your first? So talk a bit about that then. What was your first big editing job that you were like, oh my god, why are you giving this to me?
Well, the first one was actually the second series of the trip. He gave me a couple of episodes, which was nice in a way because I'd been through the first series, so I knew what to expect. It wasn't a complete shock.
Sure.
The first feature I did, I felt slightly out of my depth. But then, as with Matt, Michael's also an editor, so we sit side by side and bounce off each other, which is quite reassuring when you're in that position.
That must be an interesting process to not second guess, but to construct the timing of two people who have no doubt impeccable timing. How do you go about editing Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon?
You'd be surprised.
So are you guys actually constructing all that timing?
No. When it works well, it is completely down to them. It's like when it really works well, there's very little you should need to do. Just nips and tucks here, really. It's when they're flowing, they're flowing. It's often actually the scripted bits that need the most work.
Yeah, sure.
Because obviously there's a link through all the series following the Romantic Poets.
Okay.
And when they're told to talk about those sort of subjects, that's when I get involved, basically.
Sure, when they forget the quote or whatever that they're supposed to just pull in offhand.
When they've had one too many drinks on set and they're forgetting their lines, that's
Oh, nice. So you decided you wanted to be an editor early on, and you started kind of working towards that end and working towards that goal. How did you? I mean, have you done passion projects on the side as well to do that, or how have you ended up balancing your passion between the work?
Well, I a lot of my friends at university were into filmmaking. I was on a film course,
Right.
so there's often like times to do shorts in your own time that we get stuck in with shorts, and you sort of see where you want to lie, basically.
Right.
So I did a lot of that, and there's still shorts at the moment that seem to be cropping up more so than regular work, I think, possibly because of COVID. So quite nice to get involved at that end of stuff.
Yeah, no, sure. Okay. And I guess have more input or something in what the construction of the film would be?
Yeah, there is that. You can. I did a short recently for an actor who shoots and works completely. It was completely different from working with Matt and Michael because of the way he was coming at it. He's coming at it completely from like an act. This might be slightly insulting. I don't know. Matt, stop me. Stop me.
I'm going to let you guys go.
But he's coming at it from an actor's point of view. So he's always, and he's written it as well. So he's always very concerned about what he wanted the character to think, and what is in his head is the idea of what that character was going through at that particular point.
Okay.
And often when you get the footage, it's not clear, so you have to change it. But so it's quite fun working with different directors, and that's because you just get a completely different mindset and angle of where they're coming from. And then also that having 12 years of experience, you know that it's not necessarily what you wanted before you shot it. It's what you've got in the edit that counts. Sure.
Yeah, it's kind of problem solving a lot of the time, filmmaking, isn't it?
Like, yeah, it's the best bit of it, really, from my point of view. It's just like to piece it all together. I know an editor I used to work with called Mags Arnold often never read the script before she put the assembly together, because she was like, well, I can read it after I've put the assembly together, but let's see what I think first. It's not always. You might be wasting a bit of time on certain things.
But that would be interesting to hear then from Matt now how you feel that that works for you now, having been an editor and presumably wanted that kind of authorship on the footage to now being more of a director. Do you work as an editor in your mind while you're constructing the film as a director? How do you kind of separate the two?
Yeah, I mean, I think, all directors presumably work. It's funny because it's hard to talk about other directors, because other than very famous ones that I've read books about, right, and friends who direct, I'm never on anyone else's set, so I don't know exactly how they work or plan. But I'm assuming that that's how everyone works, in the sense that obviously you're not going in there with no preconceived notion of how it might work. You're not just going to go and shoot a random bunch of stuff. You're going in there thinking about the progression of shots and the timing of it, and where you might want one angle versus another. So I think we're all editing anyway. And I think just generally, whether you work in film or not, we're all becoming much more sophisticated in the way that understanding film construction and the language of a scene. It's been interesting having young daughters and seeing what they understand and what they don't understand about the language of film, which seems so obvious to us now because we've grown up with it, but actually is kind of as obscure in a lot of ways as hieroglyphics or something. It's probably going to seem that ludicrous in 100 years' time when people look back at what it's so unusual. Like if you look at a film like 1917, that's a much more natural way of looking at the world, because we don't cut. I mean, we blink, but other than blinking, we don't cut in our own heads. But we've created this amazing language, which is a bunch of symbols and signs that tells us things are happening. And the dissolve means one thing in one context, it means something else. So in that sense, I think we're all becoming very familiar with the language now. But yeah, I think the editing background for me, it was really, I mean, my film school, I didn't go to film school like Mark, but I watched an insane amount of films growing up and became very analytical about them. And I'd do funny things to teach myself how they were working, like switch the sound off or just record the sound. I had a friend who had a tape deck so you could record the sound, so we'd listen to the audio just walking around on our Walkman. So just kind of thinking about so what is it that's working and not working at each point. And yeah, as a director now, I think, I mean, my film school was, kind of either self-taught, which I think is a good way of doing it initially anyway. And then working with Michael, because it was the funny thing about him is he's not, you hear a lot about people like maybe Anthony Minghella and so on, who used to take younger filmmakers under their wing and kind of talk to them and take them for cups of tea and discuss their philosophy and their style of filmmaking. And Michael's not like that. He's just very practical.
Right. And
I mean, he just trusts you. So I remember I had no experience. I mean, I was probably the last person on the planet you would imagine that you would give an editing job. I did a film for him called 9 Songs. And I was trying to, shoot and do my own stuff. At the same time, I was doing bits of editing on the side. And I was working for one of his production designers, Mark Tildesley, on The Constant Gardener, doing some editing for them.
Oh, wow. Great.
Relatives film, yeah. And I was doing that, and then Michael rang up and was like, oh, I need you to come over to Revolution this afternoon. So I went over there, even though I was in the middle of doing another film. And he said, I've got some footage. Do you want to have a look at it? And so I started just cutting it together. And after about 2 months, I kind of assumed I was the editor. We never actually discussed it. But it was amazing. And it was quite an experimental film. So that was another, then again, it's kind of realizing that in one style of filmmaking, which is that was even more experimental than Michael normally does, but it doesn't actually matter. Exactly as Mark's saying, you're discovering it in the edit, and there doesn't necessarily have to be a fully formed plan up front, as long as you kind of trust that the process will discover something along the way. So I think in terms of that, yeah, that was really my film school. And I think in now with an editing background, hopefully I'm getting better at understanding being on set and going, right, we don't need that bit. Yeah, that's fine. I've got it,
Oh,
but
maybe it's become less... Sorry, go on.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think, but maybe that never changes. I mean, you hear a lot about, there was one guy, a Chinese filmmaker, and someone else, I think a South Korean filmmaker, because they're so meticulous in terms of the storyboards and in terms of their editing background.
Yeah. They
would literally, I'm sure actors don't love this, but they would literally go, okay, say that line, great, we've got that in the wide, fine. Now say that line, that's the close-up. I'll say that,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're almost like animation or something.
Yeah, no, that's true. I've made some Hong Kong, I've done AD'd some Hong Kong shoots here, and they will shoot reverse. So they will shoot the line that way, then everybody move around the other side and shoot the reply, and then everybody move around this side.
Wow.
And all the while, all of the guys are actually holding lights around. Kind of, it's a bit mayhem. But,
it sounds like fun, but yeah. So in terms of I think I'm hopefully getting better each time, understanding what I will need, but not necessarily. I think particularly on documentaries, my instinct is just to keep on shooting stuff, because every time you switch the camera off, something amazing and irreplaceable and unrepeatable happens, and
Sure.
that's fun. So, you know,
it seems to inform. It seems to inform your drama style, surely, the documentary style. I watched Spike Island actually yesterday, and some of the most fun sequences there are these the gigs and outside, you know, at the gig, at the main gig, at the Spike Island gig, where the camera's just rolling around the room and everybody's clearly, it doesn't look like anybody's acting. It's like really a big performance kind of thing. You know?
Good. Yeah. I think so. I mean, again, that was kind of similar to Michael Andrews' philosophy, which was just like, you know, let things happen, and then you kind of try and harness it. I mean, it's interesting. There are filmmakers who are very, very controlled and very exacting, and you think of you know, whether it's Stanley Kubrick or Wes Anderson, where it's like, this is the frame, and if that flower on the left hand of screen moves an inch to the right, it's wrong, because that's what my brain says. And there's other filmmakers like, I guess, like Fellini or Coppola, who are kind of, you know, at the most extreme, where it's like a circus and they're just trying to capture bits of this circus. I'm sure Von Trier's a bit like that. And so, I don't know, I've really admired filmmakers who are much more controlled, but I prefer working in the other way.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, that's very interesting. We're still kind of at the time where we're talking about how you guys came up into the industry. It was interesting to hear, Mark, about that job where you had to, and actually Matt just now as well, where on 9 Songs you jumped in as an editor. Mark, was there a moment after that where you felt like more comfortably in the role, that you'd hit your stride and this is indeed what you always were meant to do? How do you know that you're supposed to continue? Because it takes a lot of stamina, filmmaking. So how do you know that you should continue to do this?
Well, the enjoyment never left. Like, the enjoyment was always there, even when you're out of your depth. If anything, it's kind of more exhilarating when you're slightly out of your depth. It's always a good place to be. And the learning curve was very steep. But again, as I say, with Michael next to you, there is that lovely safety net of having someone that knows exactly what they want and what they're doing. So to be honest with you, I mean, you never stop going, like, the learning curve never stops going up. But the initial, like, 3 or 4 films that I was editing, it was very steep and great. Like, it's good to be out of your depth.
Yeah, no, indeed, well said. I think there's a perception that you've made it, and then you're just a pro at your job. But actually, from one job to the next, you always learn some new aspect about.
Yeah, and as Matt was saying, like with Michael and with Matt, that I've been lucky to work with, their range of filmmaking is vast. So it's always. So they go from documentary to drama to, you know, so it's always changing. So, and like archive footage, every aspect of the job is different. So once you've done a drama, the next project's a documentary. It keeps you on your toes.
No, sure. Well, what would you say then is the most challenging project to construct as an editor? Would it be lots of archive footage, or in a drama?
I think initially I would have to say the archive footage initially to get a structure of and to work out what the story you're telling is the hardest. But then once you've got a framework, it's essentially the same thing. You're essentially telling a story. So it's but the initial part of getting things on a timeline and working out what you have and what you haven't got from a. Because you know what you've shot, right? The director knows what they've shot, so there's a lot more structure to start with in a drama.
Fair enough. Well, with the archive footage, I noticed in the Coldplay film that you guys worked on that there's an enormous amount of archive there. How do you two work together to choose what that story is, and how which pieces of footage you're going to use where? Because the amount of footage in that film must have been enormous. I mean, there was, you know, the way that the VFX artists or motion graphics guys must have displayed it around the screen as well. I mean, it was just constant. elements going on. Can you talk to us a bit
hard.
about that process?
Yeah. I mean, that was well, I mean, Mark can talk more about it, but I think that's probably one of the hardest ones we've done, precisely for that reason. I mean, well, for two reasons really. In that, not only was there a ton of footage, but also the story itself was very, very it was so wide ranging. Because so when we'd done the Supersonic, the Oasis one, that was 2 years, and we very deliberately focused it on 2 years. We thought we can tell that 2 year period really, really, really clearly. Right. But I think the tricky thing for me was, and I remember at the time saying that we don't want to do 20 years of Oasis because it's just like, it's impossible to squeeze in the space of 2 hours. And then of course on the next project we did exactly that. and Paul Mark, because he just got, I mean, I'd been shooting for 20 years. And then obviously there's a lot of people like me who had known the band and who had either filmed, they could be professionals or also just friends who'd filmed over the years. Then the band also had begun filming themselves at points. So we had a ton of stuff, and all we knew really was that I had a very vague idea that we would try and dovetail the two timelines. So we would have the story of that tour, or that story of that album and that tour, which they saw as the culmination of that 20-year journey, plus hopping back and forth. And I think it was really, I mean, Mark can talk about it in more depth, but it was really hard because the first thing was just to familiarize yourself with the footage, which was more or less impossible because there was tons and there was more and more coming in all the time. And then not only that, but actually as you were intercutting it, there was really something, we didn't really know what the structure was going to be. And there was a kind of more or less straightforward way which you could do, which is probably what we settled on more or less at the end, which is that they're both following a chronological trajectory at different timelines.
Right,
but
yes.
The original version was much more thematic. And we were like, okay, we're going to do a section on bad times. Okay, so that's going to be, for example, the third album, but it's also going to be this thing, and it's also going to be the previous album because it's about, you know, breaking up and divorce and these kind of issues. So, and we kind of got to a point where we were felt like, okay, we're kind of onto something here. And then we screened it to Phil, who's like the band's 5th member, and he hated it so much that he toyed with the idea of junking the whole project. So then we went back and had a rethink. But I do think it benefited from that kind of moment with hindsight. But I don't know, but Mark can talk more about exactly how we got through that. But it was tough. It was really tough.
Yeah, we had I think well over 1,000 hours of footage initially. I don't know how much we had at the end, but there was 3 of us in the edit just going through things and just logging things. It's weird because as well, because you don't know what you're looking for, and especially initially, everything is interesting and exciting. It's like, oh, that could be good. That could be that. We could use this here. We could use that there. Mm-hmm. So your initial pull is often nowhere near where it needs to be because you're excited about the footage. It's new. Everything's new to you.
Yeah, like Matt was saying that the initial cut that you did, that you showed Phil, was more thematic, or it was more broad. Was it his reaction that then caused you to realize, maybe there's a storyline here in Phil being the 5th member that you haven't explored? Did that storyline come from that experience, or was that there just smaller?
That was always in there. No, because we always talked about it as being this childhood friendship evolving through the years. And I think, you know, again, you need some kind of take on it going into it. And it might change as you go along. But I think with Oasis, it was like, okay, this is going to be about their ascent, you know, how the kind of those first 2 years till they make it. And then we're going to stop. And with this one, we were like, okay, well, they don't have the sibling rivalry thing. They didn't really do drugs and all this. It's like, what are the things that ordinarily in a film like this, you were going to go, okay, well, these are the things that they didn't break up. And so then we talked about it being childhood friendship evolving through the years. And I always remember them talking about it being like a marriage. You know, successful marriages, it's not that every single day is the best day of all time. It's that you somehow, you know, you both of you evolving as people and evolving as evolving together, I suppose. And it was the same kind of thing with the 5 of them. So no, that was always part of it. And in fact, actually, I think Phil was keen for himself not to be in it. You know, he kept saying, I'm not part of this story, I'm not part of this story. And then there's other things we toyed with, you know, it's like, obviously I'm there as a bystander. Should I be part of the narrative? I mean, my instinct is always not to be involved in it, but should I be part of it? Because obviously I'd been filming over the years. Should I kind of be narrating? You know, we talked about lots of different things.
Sure. And
then I just felt like there's so many ingredients as it is. I just don't want to overburden it. Let's try and strip it down to its most essential thing. I mean, you know, you could have done a 10-part Netflix series or something just as well with the same footage. But there was something also quite powerful, I think, about concentrating it. And their instinct as a band is always like less is more. Like they had to do short albums with not that many tracks on them because it's like just get out while you're ahead. So I think that became our philosophy.
Oh, nice. And in the same way as Michael Winterbottom as well is really, you know, making films, pushing them out there, not dwelling too long on projects, just kind of keeping creative. Seems like it's an influence that that speaks to you both and for your peers and everything.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, to me, it makes sense. I admire people who sit and work on a project and it just stays for 5 years and it doesn't come off. I mean, I like Paul Thomas Anderson, where there's a massive gap in between each thing because he's like, no, this is the project. And if it takes me 10 years to make it, that's what it's going to take. Or if it takes me 1 year to make, or like Terrence Malick, who then suddenly became massively, but he had like kind of 12-year gaps in between films, and then now he has like 3 minute gaps.
Yeah,
but I really admire that. But I think I would drive me crazy not to be actually working on stuff, and also I would be sleeping on the street. So I don't know how you would.
That's the key. it's
gotta work.
Choices through need to be on another project.
Yeah. I remember Michael and Andrew talking about that actually at one point, just saying, look. Yeah, I think they got frustrated with like interviewers constantly saying, "Oh, but you're so prolific. You're so prolific." They're like, "We're no more prolific than an actor who goes to work every week, every day. Like we just go to the office every day and make stuff."
Right.
But, oh my God, you're so prolific. It's like, well, only in comparison to I think they were so determined at making stuff by Brooke. And if I think other people are like, look, this is a $30 million film, so we need $1 million at least. And their philosophy was like, we're going to make this film, and if we've got to make it for a $5, and she's like, then we're going to do that. But we're going to make it. And I think a lot of people are a bit more precious. Maybe that's right, maybe that's right. But we've kind of inherited that. It's like, we'll get it made somehow. Which is always frustrating when you go in for meetings about budgets with financials and stuff. And the elephant in the room for me is always like, look, I would pay to make this film. Which is not good this is why I have an agent, and then I don't negotiate my contract. But I just, I would do anything to make it. So if you're going to force me to shoot it on my phone, then that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, interesting.
But no, it feels that way.
That's got to be, you've got to be torn to some extent because, it's, I can't remember who said it, but do a job that you love and then you never feel like you work a day. It is kind of what some filmmakers, I suppose, end up doing. So yeah, you would want to be doing this every day. So yeah, no, I totally take that. So guys, let's talk a little bit about what's going on now. What are you working on any projects, Mark? What have you been doing during lockdown, I suppose? Have you got some stuff on the horizon that's about to come up? Also, just Matt, I think a couple of times your mic distorted or something. Oh, okay, now you're mute, but let me try. Oh no, you've unmuted. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
is that better?
Yeah,
I think it was doing that the other day as well.
Okay, cool. Mark, so tell us a little bit about what you've been up to and what you see on the horizon. Is there another trip going on in another European country?
There is no more trips, unfortunately.
That was it. The end of Greece.
Well, look, I wouldn't be surprised
with his family. Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if they wheeled them out somewhere else. but the party line is there's no more, unfortunately. It's a great job to do because you go to some amazing places, but yeah, they wanted to draw a line in the sand on this one.
Fair enough.
I'm sure they'll be back. I'm actually here to ask Matt for a job. That's the only reason I thought I was coming on.
You're networking.
Anytime.
Yeah. Well, no, there's as I said earlier about shorts. There's potentially. I don't know. It's bad talking about things that are coming on in the future.
I hear you, and I don't want to put you in that position where you feel like you have to divulge something that's not baked yet or something.
Purely because then you get a phone call 5 minutes later saying the money's fallen through. But
definitely.
But
don't update your IMDb before you finish the project. Definitely
don't go near it. Yeah, there's the potential to do a short film on COVID actually, and
cool.
With Michael, looking for like short, like 10-minute documentary about the lives of refugees in this country during lockdown and comparing it to the lives of refugees in any normal, when they're, waiting to be, get refuge in the country.
We talked about this a little bit earlier before the hour, that there were similarities between the life of a refugee and what we've all experienced as lockdown.
Yeah, you can't go outside, you're not allowed to work. There are parallels there to be made. And just to remind people that these people are still, in camps, not working and not going outside now the lockdown's over. So that's a possible, hopefully that happens, because sounds like a good project.
Nice. Well, maybe going backwards a little bit, Mark, maybe you could talk about any advice you would give to editors looking to get into your position. You're doing films and you're doing TV. What would you say are some things that you would have liked to have known getting into the industry when you were a bit younger?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first big job I got was on a film out in Spain, shot in Malta. And I was a trainee editor, and I ended up, it was meant to be a 3-month position. I ended up staying on for like 14 months. And it was just, that was invaluable. Because you go in thinking, right, I'm going to edit, you may have learned some skills before you get into the industry and edited your own stuff, which is important. You should always keep doing that on the side. Always keep making your own stuff and doing shorts for people, and just constantly working on the thing you want to do, but then training to be an assistant, and as you know, for me, it was like learning how to be a little bit more organized, because it doesn't come naturally.
I'd imagine being an assistant editor and being a creative editor are very different things, and organizing your workflow and everything must be important lessons to learn.
Exactly, and it's completely. But you got to go in with an open mind. It's just like you can't assume, because some people are assistants all their life. Some people are, for years they're assistant editors, and it's an important part of the job. And
they love that, and that's what they want to keep on doing.
Yes, exactly. But also, like, if you're in that position and you want to progress, it's like you can't start shirking that because of where you want to get. You've got to knuckle down and do that, I think. But it was, I learned some amazing skills off of Carolina, who was the assistant, and Nacho, the editor, out in Spain.
Nice. And
then, as I say, I was slightly naive coming into it, so I didn't really know how to get my foot in the door. I sent out a lot of CVs to post houses, which I don't know that, in hindsight, I didn't end up going down that route because I didn't get any response. But in hindsight, I don't know that that's a great way to meet the right people. I think working for a small production company like Matt and I did, you meet people that you can speak to them, and like you can show your worth in a small company.
And how did you choose that company? Was there something about the politics of Michael Winterbottom that both kind of attracted you to it, or? Well,
I ended up meeting through old editors of Michael. I ended up working with old editors, and they told me about the company, and they told me about the opportunity to work there.
Nice.
And I mean, so I didn't really enter editing as, I don't know, probably not the way most people would, but just doing other jobs and talking to people about wanting to be an editor, but then showing your worth wherever you get the opportunity, basically.
Yeah, you guys, I'm not sure who mentioned it earlier, just saying this. Oh yeah, I think you said it, Mark. This is what I actually want to do, even though I am here doing this kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, as long as because at the beginning, all you can do is show that you have some value on set, or show you're keen.
Yeah.
Because no one knows what you're capable of, really. So as long as you're keen and willing, I mean, it's a priceless trait.
Sound advice, I would say. Yeah, be enthusiastic.
You'd be surprised how many people aren't.
No, that's actually a good point. You sometimes see people walking around with really, well, I mean, if you're giving everybody suntan lotion and watering them all day and they're telling you to fuck off, then I can imagine that gets a little grating. I do feel for PAs at times, they can get a raw deal. But yeah, you've got to try and find some thicker skin to kind of battle through difficulties in that environment, egos, etc., in order to show that you're capable there, if that's what you want to do. I think a lot of the time people end up in roles and they're like, oh wow, this is definitely not what I want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I've been very lucky, to be honest with you. The amount of egos I've encountered are minimal.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm an AD, so I've met a fair few.
Yeah, I can't tell if you're looking at me then. Yeah, so you're really quiet at the end of that sentence. That's the problem with Zoom.
Matt, tell us
Only
a bit
one
about
monster I've met so far.
I don't want to brush it under the carpet. If you'd like to address anything, Matt, this is your platform.
Exactly. You're being watched by the entire internet right now. No, I mean, similar kind of thing for me getting into it. I mean, I really, it's funny. It is the most addictive and most expensive drug on the planet, filmmaking, because it's weird, the effect. Obviously it has that effect on all of us, otherwise we wouldn't be, no one would be watching anything. But I think that process of telling stories and seeing and understand the language and understand that there's a group of people who make these things, the images don't just appear by themselves. I mean, that took, I remember that just being an incredible, it was like a magic trick, just understanding how that worked, starting to understand how that worked. I remember Dad going to the library and finding books on filmmaking, and they would have programs like Mark Cousins had Scene by Scene, and there was Movie Joe and a bunch of things like that that just taught me over the years. So that was kind of how I began to understand about it. But I really had, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do, but I had absolutely no idea how to do it. And I think probably the mystery around it has probably disappeared now, because obviously anyone can look online in 5 seconds and find out the ins and outs of how films are made, but then it's actually getting your foot in the door. And I don't know whether the strategy that I used kind of I don't know if it was unconsciously, but I just felt like, look, I'll go off and try and make my own stuff because that's what I want to do. So I become self-sufficient. But if I can carry on making, I remember like a girlfriend I had at uni saying, look, it's great you're running off, going and making all this stuff, but no one really gives a shit. So well, you should probably go and meet some people in the industry. And her dad was a scriptwriter, and he kind of through someone and another person, he kind of got me onto a film set for a couple of days, and just happened someone there was talking about this position at Revolution Films, which I didn't get. I went in for the interview and didn't get it. But luckily the person who did get the job was so incompetent, and they fired him after a day, or he ran off to go get married, or something really weird happened. And they rang me, and I was actually on holiday, and I'd grown up loving Michael's films, and I remember I worked at my only job growing up was working at a cinema, and I basically progressed from making the popcorn and selling the tickets to then they gave me a shot at being projectionist for a bit. And I remember that he was supposed to be, well, it wasn't very difficult. I mean, basically, you were there really as a kind of
just like talk about coming in.
Burnt down. Well, no, it was fun, but anyway, he was due to. This is quite classic Michael behavior. He was due to come and give a talk there, and I'd loved his film. They'd shown a film of his called Butterfly Kiss, and he was due to come and do a Q&A, and I had to watch the film every day to make sure that it was going, because we had a lot of issues with I remember with the projector, we would just switch off, so there was a button I could go and press or go run upstairs to try and get it fixed. So I ended up watching that film about 100 times probably, and he was due to come and give a Q&A, and I was like, wow, he's coming. Brilliant, we'll actually get to make, but of course he never turned up. And then later on when I was at university, straight after that, they released a film of his in Andrews called Wonderland, which is still one of my favorite films. And I remember seeing it. It was on at the London Film Festival, and I was working for the London Student magazine still while doing my course. And I saw it, and it blew me away. I was like, this is amazing. This is it really it felt so real. It felt like it was the kind of experience that I'd had of London. And so I kind of applied to see if I could get an interview with them. And again, they were not interested. So when I was sitting in a trailer, photocopying whatever I was being made to do, and I heard that this position was going at Revolution Films, I was like, so I put my name forward for it. So when I was on holiday after not getting the job, And they rang and said, "Can you get on a plane, come back tomorrow morning?" I was like, "Yeah, fuck yeah." So I just got on the next plane, went home. But I think it's that kind of thing. It's like, I'm sure it's the kind of thing that probably Mark would do, and a lot of people that I work with would do. But also, there's a lot of people who's like, right, exactly. So it's a different attitude. Whereas I think, looking back on it, I've been very lucky, but also I've been incredibly keen and stubborn, which I think is part of the thing. And there's a lot of people, I remember that, I was there for only a couple of days, and then Michael wandered in. I met him for the first time, and he was like, "Oh, okay, fine. How you doing? Oh, nice to meet you," kind of thing. "Oh, what is it you want to do?" And I was just, "I want to be a director like you, and I do this." And I kind of, "Oh, I can edit." And he was like, "Yeah, but what can you do?" It's like, "Yeah, I can edit, I can shoot, and I write." And he was like, "Oh, okay." And he'd obviously banked it somewhere, because he'd just come in and out of the office, but at that time the edit suite wasn't even in the office. And but then like 6 months later or something, he was like, "Oh, I want you to come and shoot all the second unit stuff on 24-hour party," which he was doing at that point.
Oh, great.
Which is amazing. Would never happen anywhere else.
Yeah.
So I think, but it's interesting that in terms of the attitude, I remember a few people that then came later on for work experience at Revolution at different stages. And I'd see Michael give them the same kind of opportunity. I'm like, "Oh yeah, what do you want to do?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't know, I'm bored." And they'd be on Facebook the whole time. And I was like, "Well, you'd be earning more money probably working at McDonald's at this stage. So you might as well love it if you're here, So I think in that sense, obviously you can be lucky at different stages, and life finds funny ways of presenting these opportunities. But I think if you're the kind of person who's ready to jump on them, I'm sure there's a lot of times that Mark's had opportunities that he sees, which other people would have been like, "Oh, that's not enough money," or "No, actually, it sounds like it's going to be a pain," or "What do I need? I've got to leave the house tomorrow morning. No, I'm not going to bother doing that."
Yeah, coming back off holiday was an interesting choice, but a good one.
The same thing happened with me with Michael. When I worked on the first trip, I didn't expect to hear from them again. I got the weird impression that Michael wasn't massively keen on me. And I went off on holiday, and then I was in Malaysia and got a call. I mean, I'd been away for a while, and I got a call from Melissa, producer. "Next flight." See, I'm off. Yeah. I went straight back.
So the same advice from both of you then, like be ready to get back to England at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's just that keenness. I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, again, like Mark, I've been lucky that like 90% that I've ever worked with have been amazing and been insanely hardworking, and everyone treats it like it's their project, which it is, as much as the directors or the producers. But then every so often you encounter, I always assumed that I was quite good at leading people, because everyone was working their asses off and just doing it and just doing this amazing. You get to make these films, and everyone would put in 100%, but actually had nothing to do with me. It was just their passion for the project. And when you meet people who are not that asked, there's not that much you can do to persuade them the other way around. You just end up having to go, "Oh God, this just isn't working." And it happened very rarely in my experience. But you do meet people, it's just not their thing.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but it's like, it's not, you can't make films that way, unfortunately. It really has to be, for me anyway, especially on the low budget indie side of things, which is what I've been working on. And you can't really make things that way. You have to be passionate about it.
Makes sense, definitely. Yeah, sound advice, guys. Is there anything that you guys have got in the pipeline together at some point, a passion project or anything that you want to talk about? Yeah, Mark's interviewing.
Yeah, well, I'd love to do it, Mark keeps on turning me down. That's the problem. I've tons of projects. Every time I offer him something, he's always busy. But yeah, no, it'd be great. I mean, it's funny because we worked on, like Mark said, we were on a lot of different kinds of projects. So that the first time we actually worked together was we did this thing for the UN, for this global goals thing for Richard Curtis. And off the back of that, and then I was working on this Oasis project simultaneously, and then we went and did this Red Nose Day stuff. We did a kind of remake of Love Actually, and then off the back of that, then we launched immediately into Coldplay, and then off the back of that, we immediately went into this Bauhaus anniversary documentary for the BBC. So it was kind of relentless. I can understand why he's wanted to spend a bit of time away from it. It's not easy.
Very nice, guys. Also, let's take some time to take some Q&As from from anybody who's watching on Facebook or on Zoom. If you have any questions for Matt and Mark, please send them through. I've got a question.
I see
here.
a couple.
Yeah, there's a couple here. One from Martina. What maybe because I asked Mark already this kind of question before about what was the biggest challenges in editing. Maybe Matt, what's the hardest film that you've made so far?
Probably the hardest one to make for various different reasons. I made a film which probably no one on the planet has seen, but it was called Ashes, which was a film that was inspired by my dad had Alzheimer's, and I started writing almost like a kind of like a daily diary about what was going on, and thought, oh, I should turn it into a script, and I started writing it, and it was very much, I suppose, almost like a kind of in the third person. It was almost from my perspective, and I was thinking, I don't know this is necessarily true to his experience of it, of what Alzheimer's is. It's only for a long time. And then I kind of reimagined it as a thriller, because also my dad loved thrillers. He loved gangster films, you know, kind of 40s, 50s gangster films. And so I reimagined it as that. And it was a really, really, for obvious reasons, very difficult film to finance because it's a bit of a downer. And it's to do with Alzheimer's and these kind of, but we managed to get an incredible cast. I mean, we got Ray Winton, Leslie Manville, Jodie Whittaker, Jim Sturgis, Luke Evans, all these incredible actors.
Amazing.
And we made it for a pittance. I think our budget got halved in pre-production and schedule and stuff. You know, all the usual horror stories. But we were lucky that, you know, the Isle of Man came in and basically financed it. And it was an amazing project to work on, but it was really difficult. And every scene, it was like, if it's in focus, we better move on. And then but the Cinema NX, the company behind it, closed and decided they were wrapping themselves up as we were filming. So it didn't really have a home at the end of it. So that was it was difficult. But on the other hand, I think every time I worked on something, whether it's been good, bad, or indifferent, or, you know, I'm proud of it, or it gets out there, it doesn't, I always feel like, well, we made it, you know. And there is definitely another alternate reality where we never got to make it, and it was just an idea sitting in a desk somewhere. So I feel, so even the hard ones, I mean, sometimes the hard ones, you know, that's probably the film I'm proudest of, even though no one's seen it.
I will have to see it. I haven't seen it.
And I haven't watched it since we made it, and I never will. But I feel very, very proud that we made it, and whether it's a good film or a terrible film, it's still the one I'm proudest of, I think.
Well, congratulations. It sounds very worth seeing, so I'll check that out for sure.
Thanks.
So, Mark, what would be the film you're most proud of that you've worked on?
That is a good question. Well, in a weird way, I guess it was the first edit feature I did with Michael. And
what was that one? Sorry.
Face of an Angel.
Okay.
For lots of reasons. This first job, I wanted, first time of doing what I was passionate about doing and really wanted to do. Learn an incredible amount. A lot of challenges along the way, and looking back at it, I probably do a lot differently, because when you're that young and you're doing it, you're very sort of, not subservient, probably the wrong word, but you're sort of very like, okay, whatever, that's better.
Say yes too many times. Yeah.
You're saying yes a lot to things that you may not agree with.
Who's the actress? Is it Vanessa Redgrave or someone who said she wished she told more people to fuck off?
I don't wish I'd told Michael to fuck off.
Good. Yeah.
Sounds like a bad. Yeah, that's bad advice.
But you know, just having the confidence, because there was things you look back on, you go, oh, maybe I could have done this, could have done that, and having the confidence to know that your opinion is valid.
Yeah.
But it was still, definitely the proudest job I've worked on so far.
Excellent. We've got nice. We've got a question to Matt about, I think it's a Coldplay question. What album do you think is the most impressive in their? I don't know if that's really appropriate to what we're talking about.
No, well, I mean, it's interesting. I think in the same way with filmmaking, you know, I mean, it's kind of what we're still talking about now in terms of the process. Sometimes I often feel like it's not irrelevant, but obviously the final film, in some ways, is like a lovely byproduct of the process of finding that film. And right. in some ways, it's not obviously it's not incidental, but you know, the same way with Ashes and the same way in other films. I feel like the process of discovering what that film is and whether it's going off on a shoot somewhere or whether it's discovering in the edit, that's just as rewarding, you know. And I feel like there's films that I've worked on, you know, we made a film about Burmese refugees years ago, going to Sheffield from Burma, and we followed them and so on. And again, it's probably not many people have seen it, but it was an amazing what a privilege to be able to go out and work like that. And so I don't know. I think in terms of Coldplay albums, the first one that I really witnessed firsthand was when they were doing Viva La Vida. And it was definitely, it was a real privilege because they were reinventing themselves. They kind of felt like they got stuck. They had got slightly, and this is what all in the film, I'm not saying anything that they haven't said themselves, that they got caught up on the third album, which was their biggest success, and they were going to be the new U2. And I think they realized they didn't enjoy that very much. And they didn't feel, I love that third album, but they didn't feel it was bringing the best out of them and that they were capable of something different. And when they brought Brian Eno in specifically to mess things up a bit and experiment and do crazy things to free them up and get them to play each other's instruments or play blindfold or get hypnotized, all these kind of things.
Right.
Which obviously we've never really tried anything like that, but I think in the edit and on shoots, you are kind of trying to mix things up and not do the obvious thing. And certainly like without being gimmicky, in a scene, for example, in a drama where you're shooting two people talking, sat at a table, there's, you can shoot it the EastEnders way and you'll know exactly what you need to cover. And you can do it wide and two close-ups and you're done and you're out of there in an hour. But then what's the scene about and all those kind of things. So I'm sure that's kind of thing that, like every person who's vaguely creative is this, it's the same thing. You're trying to challenge yourself. And whenever you go back and watch a lot of films, they can be obscure films or big blockbusters. I'm always amazed by the amount of invention and things that you just took for granted. I mean, even watching Raiders of the Lost Ark recently with my kids, I was just like, he's doing half of it in one shot. I mean, it's unbelievable. The level of like just sheer brilliance and creativity and balls to be on a big blockbuster and do no coverage on major scenes. Just like, wow,
Yeah, that's cool.
That's why he's Steven Spielberg. But
yeah.
No, exactly. So I think but it's only if it's in service to the story, which it always is in his case. But I think so that in that, and I think there's always, I don't know, I've completely lost my thread. But anyway, whatever the hell I was talking about. I feel like with those albums, in terms of creativity, I think they've tried to do that ever since, to try and push themselves a bit. And I feel like the same thing with filmmaking. It's like as soon as you get stuck in a rut, I think people can sense it, and the thing will feel stale.
Yeah.
If you don't have passion for what you're making, then you can't expect the audience to.
That's a really good point. It seems to be a testament to, or an element of successful artists, that they are changing throughout the course of their life and not just doing the same thing over and over again. And that there are always detractors for this new project. Like, how is this person doing this?
Right.
Well,
sold out.
Yeah,
we're obsessed with selling out now, aren't we? And I think the problem is, if you make one successful album, in the case of musicians, then there's a percentage of people who just want you to carry on making that album forever, which is obviously not what you want to do. But there's also a percentage of people who would call you a sellout if you, or like So Oasis always had that leveled at them, that they never evolved, and then Coldplay got accused of evolving too much. So whatever you do, you're screwed.
Yeah.
We like cutting people down to size in this country, particularly.
Well, you just got to be true to what you want to do, and if there's obviously an audience for all of this. This is why you're doing it, but you can't be a wizard or something. Like there's only so much human beings are capable of, I'd imagine. Okay, so we got a couple more questions here. Maybe a brief discussion on what. I mean, you guys work in documentaries, so the footage accumulation is slightly different than in drama or shooting TV, etc. How do you think that the industry will kind of develop in this time of COVID? Do you think we'll see more stories about isolation, or are we going to become puritanical about people making love on screen? What's going to happen, do you think? Either of you can start.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I have heard people saying they're getting a hell of a lot of scripts written in about loneliness and isolation.
Right.
There's only going to be so many good ones,
Yeah, I watched The Lighthouse during lockdown, and it's great, but I do not really want to watch that ever again.
Yeah, you can only make so many things of one topic. I don't know. I can't see them. People are going to write about a wide variety of things still. I don't know how the filming process will change. That's the issue, really. It's not what's being written. That will always be varied. It's how we go about filming it. I don't know. Matt must have a better idea. I can sit in a dark room on my own and crack on.
You can continue to be isolated.
It's a good question. I mean, I think there's all the all the health and safety stuff we were talking about before. I've got friends who are cinematographers who are going through that process at the moment, and I think I was reading that. So Edgar Wright, they had some pickups on last night in Soho, and I think they've had to recreate some of those Soho street corners indoors. Obviously, most people don't have the budget to do that, but they have on that one. They've made that decision to finish it off properly. And then a friend of mine who I often work with, Chris Ross, he's just gone, I think, to do some pickup shots on another project, and they have taken the studio and they've created some kind of crazy one-way system so that each department is kind of self-isolating within their certain bubble, and you never cross everyone else. So that's the part of the process going on at the moment. And I'm on Facebook. I'm a member of various different groups of kind of the filmmakery groups. And there's a lot of people who are working on Jurassic World 3 or whatever it is that's just being filmed at Pinewood, I think now, Shepperton.
Yeah.
And it's like a proper kind of lockdown process where if you have the money to do it properly, you go in, you get tested, you go in, you've got, everyone's been swabbed and you go and everything's in isolation. But obviously that's not something that people on the lower budget side of things can do. I think that's going to suffer.
Didn't they spend something like $5 million on Jurassic World, making it COVID safe?
I think so. Which is obviously that's more the entire budget of any film that I've ever worked on. So that's not really. It's not so. And then I guess the danger is that on the lower budget side of things, people will just start taking risks and go, well, fuck it, I'll just go and shoot it anyway. So it's tricky. I mean, from my perspective, I've been unbelievably lucky in that. In the process of finishing off a TV series, archive-based TV series, so I'm still just finishing that now, and then starting another one now, where the bulk of the shooting we can't start anyway, but we're kind of doing the planning. So I've been very lucky in that sense. And then in the meantime, I've been doing some writing while trying to juggle those two things and doing childcare. So I've had my hands full. So I've really kind of landed on my feet by accident. But a lot of people are not in that position. I mean, it's a huge problem for most of the freelancers out there. And I hope that we find a way of, like most businesses, but particularly on film, I think where you're not in a confined office and it's changing day by day. Most filmmaking it's just hugely varied. So you can't have a system that you stick to because, you're shooting by a motorway one day and then you're shooting in a house the next day. It's always different. Yeah.
I'd like to hear more from sets on the lower budget end that are successfly keeping people safe. I think there's been a problem with ensuring those projects. Not seen any yet. Kind of, it's all the big shows exactly. So they've just thrown money at it. But hopefully
travel is an issue, obviously, as well.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was saying travel is an issue as well. I mean, there's lots of. We were due on this thing. So I was a week before lockdown. We were due to travel to the States to interview our last two interviewees. And then we postponed it. And because my wife's a doctor and she was telling me all the stuff that was going on. And they were building bigger morgues in London and stuff. I was like, this is not a good time I think we need to send everyone home. And then a week later, they had the lockdown. So we ended up doing calls, just doing them by Zoom, which was fine for us because they were audio interviews. But it was, it's a tricky time.
Well, hopefully that project doesn't suffer too much from being on Zoom, and I hope everybody else has enjoyed these interviews, this interview here on Zoom. Thanks so much, guys, for joining me. It's really interesting to hear about your progression through the industry and your perspectives on how to do that the best. It's been illuminating, and I'm sure anybody getting into the industry is going to have found this extremely valuable. So thanks very much. And
thanks so much, Christian.
Yeah.
Cheers, Mark.
Great stuff. And I'll be back in August, just a bit of admin. I'll be back in August with a few more webinars. We're going to take a break to hit the beach, even though it seems to be raining next week. So that's frustrating, but I'm going to go and socially distance on the waves, and I'll see everybody else in August. Thanks, everyone.
See you around. Thanks so much.
Cheers. Nice one, guys. Bye-bye.